Hey everyone, it's Ruta Mittal here. Welcome back to the podcast. So, in this episode, I'm gonna talk more about why I have chosen to podcast and what are the reasons you should start podcasting if you want, and how I basically script my episodes, how I find topics for my podcast, how I create basically the entire standard operating procedure for the podcast between the team and I. So I'm basically spilling all the beans, and I'm excited. Um, Before we get started, if you like this episode, grab a photo, post it on IG stories, tag me at Ruta Mittal, and I will reshare as many stories as possible. I would love for you to share it with your friends and everyone so that this podcast can reach many more people, because I feel the message is important that anyone can start and create and scale an online business to craft a dream life for themselves and for their family. All right, let's get started. Why I podcast? I love to podcast because honestly, it's so much better than video creation and uploading on YouTube. Because for me, I don't have any team member who works with me in real life. So, and I don't like putting makeup or doing my hair on a daily basis. I don't like to set up my videos on a daily basis and do it. For me, it just takes so much more effort to create a video without a real life team. And for me, honestly, I like the vibe of the podcast so much more because you don't get as tired recording podcast as you do with videos. um, Obviously, because first of all you have to prep a lot, and second of all you have to you're creating content with everything. You're creating video content, of course it's taking a lot of energy out of you. And for me, honestly, I'm doing so many content creation at this time in my life. I'm creating marketing accelerator updates, I am doing this podcast, I am doing team meetings where I have to speak a lot. I'm doing coaching calls, I'm doing interviews, customer interviews, and things like that. I'm also wanting to dedicate more time to new products creation. So, for me, at this point in my life, I think the podcast is amazing addition. Like, you have to think of yourself, like what is the format that is the easiest for me to create in right now. I always like to choose things which are sustainable. Like, yes, of course I can put out YouTube videos every week, but then will I be able to sustain it for the rest of the year? Currently, for me, the question is no. So then I thought about, okay, but creating free content is incredibly important, not just for you guys but also for the growth of the business, as more people get to learn from me for free who don't have the budget for our products, which is completely okay. And this way I get to reach so many more people. So I do get that content creation is very important for free. It's just that I myself wasn't able to stick to any other form like video creation like all of last year. So instead of just making things difficult for myself, I just threw out the guilt and accepted that I'm not a video person at this point of my life, and I would rather create something rather than nothing. And for me, podcast creation is so easy. I literally doesn't take any setup time, and I get it done so fast. And it is where you see the most raw and authentic version of myself. Another reason why you should start creating podcast is you will learn your messaging, you will find your voice when you start to create your podcast. Like, of course, the first 20 podcasts you create will be so bad, but that's okay because no one is listening anyways, right? But when you grow and when you eventually find your voice, it's gonna be so much easier. So trust me, it's meant to be a bit hard at the start, but the reason you should create is so that you can connect better with your audience, that you can serve your audience better. And the best thing I like about podcasts is people can listen to your podcast while doing other things, like doing house chores or cleaning up the home or going out for a walk or while they are working out in the gym. I think no other platform has that kind of flexibility, and I love that. I'm a huge fan of freedom. And I also listen to podcasts because of this reason. If I am doing some house chores like tidying up the home or cooking a meal, I love playing a podcast so I can learn at the same time. I love going out on walks and playing podcasts so that I can learn at the same time. And walks are 100x more fun when I'm learning at the same time. Otherwise, it's just boring. So I like to make things as fun as possible, and learning for me makes everything fun. It's why I do house chores which need to get done. It's why I go out for walks if I don't feel like it, because I learned something new. I'll move my body at the same time. It's fun. So those are the reasons that I think you should create a podcast. And I think podcast is easiest to get started with for anyone. Like for me, I just use my Yeti and my laptop, and that's it. I don't have a fancy podcast recording / mixing machine, nothing like that. Actually, honestly, when I started, I wasn't even using my Yeti microphone. I was so lazy. I owned a Yeti microphone then also, but I was not using it because I was lazy to set it up, honestly. So I literally recorded episodes. The first few episodes that you see on this podcast are actually recorded from my phone. I just used a voice recorder app in my phone. I used to record it, and then I just used to upload it, and my editor used to record it. That's it. Now I'm like, all right, Ruta, let's not be that lazy and use a good quality microphone since you already own one. But know that I've not bought anything specifically for it. And if you don't have any fancy equipment, your phone is completely okay. You just need to get started. You'll find your voice, you'll find your messaging, you'll find that when you teach, you learn things so much more, you learn things so much faster, and you are able to communicate more effectively with your clients and customers, with your audience. Trust me, the way I am able to record podcasts now is nothing compared to what my first couple of episodes will look like. If you want to go back and listen to what a hot mess I was, you are definitely welcome to. Because before I used to struggle a lot, and now I have been able to establish a flow which makes podcast recording very easy for me. I basically, for me, the schedule right now is every Monday, just once a week, I'll dedicate 2 hours of my time every Monday, and I will record 3 episodes. That is my flow, that is my rhythm. Batch content recording and batch producing is always a vibe. It's very productive when you merge similar kind of things together. And for me, I only have to set up my podcast once and just start, and I'm done in 2 hours. And it's not even heavy on my voice because 2 hours I can easily speak. Since I do webinars and coaching calls and team meetings, 2 hours is not a problem for me. And Monday, typically we don't have a lot of meetings, so I think it works perfectly for me. Let's talk about how you should find topics. Number one, ask your customers what do they want to learn from you in the podcast format. Ask your social media audience, your email list, your Facebook audience, your LinkedIn audience. Ask any and every follower that you have on all social media platforms. Just ask them to comment. Nothing much. Don't ask them to fill a form or anything like that. Just ask them to comment, and you or your team can basically collate an entire list. That's what we did. We asked, when I was relaunching the podcast, I asked my marketing accelerator group, I asked our Instagram, that's it. Like, that's where I asked. But like, those are our main 2 channels where we are active. But for you, it could be any and all social media channels and your customer group, if any. The next thing I did was to find out topics. Watch what other influencers are creating, the top 5 to 10 influencers in your field, whatever field or niche you're in. What are the influencers creating? What are the topics? And the thing is, the process to do here is not to listen to their podcast and see what they're talking about. No, you just go to their podcast, just skim through all the podcast episodes that they are doing, the titles of the topic. And then for me, how it works is I get more ideas when I see similar kind of content. Like, oh, if they are saying how to grow on Instagram, these are the 5 steps. Maybe I'll get an idea out of it and I'll put it. So the idea is not to copy, but to model, saying that, oh, if they can talk about Instagram, I wonder if I have the expertise to talk about Instagram also. And for me, it turned out, yes, I did. Yes, I'm an Instagram expert and I can talk on that topic. So then I put that topic in my content sheet and I'm able to create content on that. So literally that's what I did for Instagram, business, marketing, freelancing, client attraction, scaling, hiring, systems, processes, all the many topics that I could think of. I jotted it down that these are the topics that I think I'm an expert in and I can create topics, I can create podcasts on. And then I asked my customers, I asked my social media audience, I did the research on current influencers which I like listening to, and I noted down the topics that they were talking about. I noted it down for myself, and in this way I actually have a list of 40 to 50 topics in no time at all. Now, of course, for you it might be a bit difficult if you're starting with zero following, which is completely okay. I still would honestly have you list down at least 20 topics in this way before you start a podcast. Because let me tell you what happens when people start a podcast, they are motivated and things like that. But sooner or later, there will come a time when they feel like giving up and they are not consistent with the podcast. And I think the main reason is because they've not planned their content in advance. Like, you should definitely be planning at least 20 content topics, because honestly, if I have to wake up on a Monday and find an empty content sheet, then I am not going to make the effort to do the research and start planning my content. No, I'd rather have all the content pieces in the front of my eyes and I choose the best 3 that I feel like recording that day and I just start doing it. So I highly recommend that you spend some time before you even start recording the podcast to do some topics research in this way that I've just shared. So the second thing is I batch record 3 podcasts a day within 2 hours. I speak slowly. The way you speak is speak as slowly as possible. Not as slowly, but I would say not too fast, not too slow, just like you're talking to a friend, but make sure that you're clear, that you are as clear as possible and you don't run fast. Like sometimes our thoughts run faster than the speed that we speak with. And I think that is something that I realize a lot of people struggle with at the start. Like their mind is racing with thoughts they want to say, but the speed of their communication is obviously slow. So don't worry about it. It's quite common and it will come with practice. But the key is to speak not too slow, not too fast, and as clearly as possible. It's completely okay to make mistakes. I also make mistakes a lot. I stammer, I stutter, I sometimes forget my train of thought. I sometimes blank out for like a few seconds. But that's what the editing phase is for. So don't record in a way that you have to do it end to end in one go without making any mistakes, because honestly that will just spook you out and it's a lot of pressure, and not a lot of people can do it that way unless you memorize a script. And I don't want podcast creation to be stressful for you. So don't worry about making mistakes. You can easily pay an editor on an hourly basis to get your podcast edited, or you can do it yourself later when you batch edit all your podcasts. You batch record in one go and then you batch edit on another day, and that's completely okay. But don't be afraid to make mistakes. Let's talk about my podcast creation process. Like once I have an entire list in front of me, I choose 3 specific topics for any Monday, whatever I feel like. If I don't feel like a topic is speaking to me, I don't force myself, because I think with podcasts, if you're not completely into recording it, then you should just pick another topic. And that's what I do, and I'm not hard on myself, and I'm absolutely not guilty that I should be doing this at all. So the way I do it, I pick a topic. For example, this one is all about why should you podcast and how I create a podcast, basically the entire standard operating procedure of the podcast. So then I put it down, I take a pen and a journal, I put the podcast title on top of the page. I then write down all the points that I want to talk to you about. So for me, for example, for this notes, I've written 6 points for this episode. Number 1 was how to research topics. Number 2 is how I batch record. Number 3 is this one which I'm talking about, which is writing 3 to 5 points in the podcast notes. Number 4 is about a microphone. Number 5 is about my uploading process. And number 6 is what my team's role is and how they publish it. So these are the 6 points. It's simple. I typically don't like to go beyond 5 to 6 points, because then if you want to do that, it's a longer podcast. And for me, the sweet spot for my content creation is anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. It's bite-sized. It helps me to be on point. It helps me to not ramble and rant. I hate when people do that, where they speak on and on about things that have nothing to do with the topic. So that's how I do it. So yeah, the third point is write 3 to 5 points in your journal. What do you want to talk about? This is so that you remember, so that you don't forget, and so that you don't lose your train of thought. If you feel like you want to add a little more details, then you can. For example, for the first point, which is topic research, I said ask your customers, ask your social media audience, email list, watch what other influencers are creating, and list down 20 topics. This is the notes which I wrote for the first topic. So I write down shorthand notes for every point as I deem necessary. But that's it. And I also sometimes burn a candle, because I love candles, I love aromatherapy, and it's a mood, it's a vibe when I create podcasts. So I do that. It's absolutely not necessary for you. But if you want to set a mood and make it fun, I always like to make things fun. Candles make podcast recording fun for me, so I do it. The fourth point is I use my Yeti microphone. However, you don't need a fancy microphone. You can start with your phone. I actually highly recommend you start with the phone, because don't spend on anything that you're not going to be consistent with. So publish your first 20 episodes and then reward yourself with a mic that you feel is best. I basically hook on my Yeti microphone to my laptop. I then open a QuickTime player, which is the native video/audio recorder inside a MacBook. Then I will do a quick test. Like, I will check whether the podcast, whether the microphone settings are fine. I will do a quick test, and I record 3 episodes a day. So I will actually do a test before every episode, because who knows, I moved around and maybe the podcast microphone is just like something changed and it's not recording anymore. And it's just the worst when you spend so much effort recording something and it did not go. So I basically create a test before every single episode. I do a small short recording of 5 to 10 seconds, see if everything is working fine, there is no echo, there is no other weird noise or anything like that. And then I start recording basically. After that, I upload and send to my editor. We use ClickUp. So as our project management tool, I create a card in ClickUp. I will upload all the raw files on my drive. Then I will share the drive folder with the ClickUp card, and then I will write any instructions as necessary for my editor. And then I will send the editor the card on our Slack channel. So everything is just like, everything has a process. There is a routine to my podcast creation process as much as possible. Once the editor informs my team that the episodes are recorded, my team listens to it for quality assurance. If there's any issues, they get it done again from the editor. Then they will write like podcast title, schedule date, podcast description. They will approve it. Sometimes I approve things that go out, sometimes I don't. And typically what I'll do is, with this new podcast launch, I will approve the first few episodes which are going out, and then I will train my team so that I don't have to review everything, and then they will do it on their own. So I don't have to review everything. My job is just to record, which is something which I can only do, and everything else is outsourced at this point in my life. And I want to share that, because if you're a sole freelancer or a sole business owner, of course you will have to do it on your own. But I do recommend that when you have the space and the bandwidth and the money to hire even someone on a freelance part-time basis, do it, because it will free up a lot of your time that only you can do. After my team is done creating content around the podcast, they also create promotional content on Instagram and Facebook and anywhere else that we promote the podcast. Sometimes we will have the team create repurposing stuff from the podcast. For example, I create a podcast, my team then creates multiple Instagram posts out of it. Then the same post gets utilized on Facebook and everywhere. So sometimes we do that. When I was doing YouTube videos, that is also something we did. The YouTube video used to get turned into podcast episode. It also used to get turned into IG and FB posts and things like that. So basically that's the entire process. If you want to set up a podcast from scratch, I don't teach on that, but I know when we started our podcast about 2 years ago, my team actually referred to this free article on the internet, which is How to Start a Podcast by Pat Flynn. So his website is smartpassiveincome.com, and he has a very in-depth tutorial on it, which is free. So if you guys want to know how to set up a podcast, definitely refer to his stuff. But yeah, these are my tips on why I create a podcast, what motivated me to get started again, how I create podcasts, how I research topics, and basically my entire process and what my team's role is in it. So I hope that motivates you. And this podcast topic actually was sent to me by my customer, one of my customers. So thank you, Arshia, for sending it over. As you know, like that, I did exactly what I told you guys. I asked from my customers and my audience. They send me episodes so that I know that I'm creating content that they want and that they need. And I'm not creating content just because I like my own voice. The content you create should be serving your audience, and it should not be just for yourself. But at the start, if no one is listening, don't let it stop you, because everyone started from zero. So if you have a fire in your heart that, okay, I want to reach people's ears, I want to serve, I want to teach, I want to share my thoughts and voice, then definitely go ahead and publish 20 episodes of a podcast, and your life will change. I hope this episode was helpful to you guys. And now I need some green tea, which is also something that I do after podcast, because this is my third episode and my voice is a bit tired now, so I need a green tea. And yeah, I hope this was helpful, you guys. I hope to see so many podcasts coming out of this after listening to this episode, and I'll see you in the next one.